The letter arrives at Whitehall Palace like a death warrant. It is July 10th, 1553. Inside, a girl of 16, a gifted scholar who would rather be in a library than on a throne, is weeping. Her name is Jane Grey. 4 days ago, her cousin, the boy King Edward VI, died, and for 4 days his death has been kept a state secret, a conspiracy of silence while the most powerful men in the kingdom decided her fate. Jane has just been informed that the king's last will, a desperate, treasonous document that would become known as the device for the succession, has bypassed his own half-sisters and named her, his Protestant cousin, as the next Queen of England. It was an audacious attempt to write 2 acts of Parliament out of existence with a stroke of a quill. She refuses. The shock is so profound, she faints. When she comes to, she argues with the passion of a legal scholar, citing the act of succession, the laws of God and man. The crown, she insists, belongs to Princess Mary. But she is a pawn in a game far older and more brutal than she is. Her ambitious father-in-law, John Dudley, the Duke of Northumberland, the man who has ruled England in all but name, will not be denied. Through threats, through cajoling, through appeals to her deep, sincere Protestant faith, framing it as a sacred duty to save England from the darkness of popery, he forces her to accept the poisoned chalice. She is brought by barge to the Tower of London, not as a prisoner, but as a monarch. As the royal standard is unfurled over the White Tower, the London crowd that has gathered to watch stares back in a cold, sullen silence. They do not cheer. They do not riot. They simply watch. They know this is a coup, and they are waiting. In our history, this silence was the prelude to a storm. The people of England rose up for the rightful heir, the Catholic Princess Mary. Northumberland's army deserted him. Jane's reign lasted a mere 9 days before the throne was ripped from beneath her. She would go from queen to prisoner in the same fortress, her life ending on the executioner's block a few months later, a tragic footnote in the bloody story of the Tudors. But our world was built on the failure of that coup. It was built on the desertion of an army and the loyalty of a people to the true bloodline. So let us ask the question that silences the crowd's defiance and rewrites a royal tragedy. What if the coup had been just a little more ruthless? What if the plan had actually worked? What if Lady Jane Grey had kept the throne? The pivot point is a single crucial mistake, a failure of nerve born from overconfidence. In our history, the Duke of Northumberland allowed his primary target, Princess Mary, to slip through his grasp. She received a secret warning, galloped away from her estates, and became a living, breathing rallying point for a massive popular uprising. But let us imagine a different Northumberland. A man who has studied the brutal logic of power and knows that in the Game of Thrones, you remove your rival from the board before you declare checkmate. As soon as King Edward's last ragged breath has left his body, before the news is made public, Northumberland dispatches a small elite force of cavalry, not with a letter, but with a warrant. 200 hand-picked men, loyal to Dudley, ride with brutal speed, not to London, but to Mary's estate at Kenninghall in Norfolk. They ride through the night, their horses' hooves muffled on the soft summer roads. They arrive before any warning. Mary, awoken from her sleep, finds her house surrounded. There is no escape. The great Catholic hope, the rightful Queen of England, is taken into custody and escorted under heavy guard to the Tower of London. She enters not as a monarch, but as a state prisoner. The same barge that will carry Jane to her throne has already carried Mary to her cell. With Mary in chains, the game changed for the Privy Council. Men who might have wavered, men who secretly favored the Tudor line, now had no choice. To defy Northumberland now, with the rightful heir already his prisoner, was not just a political disagreement, it was suicide. The council fell into line. Now, when Queen Jane is proclaimed, the dynamic is completely different. The sullen silence of the crowd remains, a sea of resentful faces. But there is no leader to turn their silence into rebellion. The Catholic lords of the realm, who would have flocked to Mary's banner, are paralyzed. Their queen is in the Tower. To rise now would be to sign her death warrant. The popular uprising fizzles before it can begin, a smattering of disconnected riots that are easily suppressed. Northumberland's army, with no one to desert to, remains loyal. He marches out of London not into a hostile countryside, but to mop up a few minor disorganized protests. He returns to the city a victor, the man who has secured the new Protestant regime. The 9 days queen is now just the queen. The first few months of her reign are a brutal consolidation of power. Jane, the young idealist, is horrified by the reality of the crown. She is a woman of deep and sincere principle, a humanist scholar who can debate Plato in the original Greek. But she is the head of a regime built on a legal fiction, and that regime must be secured with blood. A special commission, stacked with Dudley's men, finds Princess Mary guilty of treason for refusing to accept Jane's accession and for inciting the loyalty of the people. The calls for her execution are immediate and loud. But Jane, in her first great act of defiance against her handlers, refuses. To execute her cousin, God's anointed, even a Catholic one, is a sin she will not commit. A compromise is reached. Mary is forced to take the veil, her claim to the throne legally extinguished by her vows to God. She is sent to a remote, fortified convent, a living martyr, but a politically neutralized one. And what of the other sister? The 19-year-old Princess Elizabeth, the Protestant daughter of Anne Boleyn? She is a far more complex problem. She is popular, intelligent, and a Protestant. She presents no immediate religious threat, but she is a Tudor, and Jane is a Grey. In a world obsessed with bloodlines, Elizabeth is a permanent, simmering alternative. She cannot be imprisoned like Mary. So she is confined to her estates at Hatfield, placed under a polite but permanent house arrest, a guest in a gilded cage, watched by Dudley spies. She plays the part of the loyal, bookish cousin, all the while learning the hard lessons of survival that our history's Elizabeth learned in the Tower. At the center of this new web of power is the clash between the young queen and her father-in-law. This is not a puppet and her master. Jane possesses a formidable will. In a famous and historically true incident, she refuses Northumberland's demand that she make her own husband, his arrogant son Guilford Dudley, king. She will make him a duke, she says, her voice ringing with unexpected authority. But the crown is hers alone, granted by Parliament and the will of the late king. The Dudley family, who thought they had captured a pawn, find they have crowned a queen. This becomes the central conflict of the early reign. The court is split. There is the Queen's party, made up of her family, the Greys, and the sincere religious reformers like Archbishop Cranmer, and there is the Lord Protector's party, the vast and powerful Dudley clan, and the pragmatists who know that Northumberland is the true power in the land. With the throne secure, the Dudley regime unleashes a second, more radical reformation. King Edward's reforms were just the beginning. Now, with Queen Jane as the new Deborah, the biblical prophetess, England is to be made into a new godly Commonwealth, a new Geneva on the Thames. John Knox, the fiery Scottish reformer who had already been a powerful voice at Edward's court, was now unleashed. he became the ideological heart of the new English Geneva. The last vestiges of Catholic ceremony are ripped from the churches. The Book of Common Prayer is revised again, stripped of anything that hints at popish superstition. The powerful bishops are sidelined, their authority given to committees of devout and often fanatical laymen. Theaters are closed as dens of immorality. The colorful festivals of Merry England are suppressed as pagan relics. It is a nation ruled by the sermon and the scholar.
This New England is an international pariah. The great Catholic powers, Spain and France, see it as a rogue state run by heretics and usurpers. But it becomes the undisputed leader of the Protestant International. Protestant refugees from across Europe flock to England, turning it into a hotbed of radical thought. But Northumberland, now secure, faced a bankrupt kingdom. His solution was a continuation of Edward's policies, but with a new ruthlessness. The last of the church lands were seized. The currency was aggressively reformed, and new taxes were levied, not by a cooperative parliament, but by royal decree. This created an efficient, solvent state, but it further alienated the landed gentry, creating a permanent class of resentful political outsiders who yearned for the days when their property and rights were secure under the Tudors. The survival of the regime depends on one more thing: an heir. Jane's marriage to Guildford Dudley is a loveless political union, but it is her duty. In 1555, after 2 years on the throne, she gives birth. To secure the dynasty, it must be a son. And it is. Let us name him Edward, for the king who gave her the crown. The Dudley Grey dynasty is now secure. The claims of the Tudor sisters are a fading memory. Decades pass. The old Duke of Northumberland dies, and Queen Jane, now a mature and experienced monarch in her 40s, finally rules in her own right. She is not Elizabeth. She is not a pragmatist who seeks a middle way. She is a woman of unshakable, severe faith, a scholar queen who rules a kingdom remade in her own image. She is respected, but she is not loved. The warmth, the charisma, the political genius of Elizabeth is absent, replaced by a cold, intellectual piety. Her court is not a place of poetry and romance, but of theological debate and sober statecraft. And what of Elizabeth? She lives out her life at Hatfield, the eternal prisoner, the great what if of this new age. She becomes a symbol for the disaffected. In the 1570s, a group of rebel lords, perhaps led by the disgraced Howard family, try to put her on the throne. The plot is discovered by the state's ever-watchful spies. The rebellion is crushed. For Queen Jane, this was the ultimate test. To execute her cousin would be to break the most sacred of taboos, the same taboo she had honored by sparing Mary. But her counselors would have been relentless, arguing that their survival of the state and of her own son depended on it. They would have reminded her that Elizabeth was not just a cousin. In the eyes of many, she was the last Tudor, a living symbol of a rival dynasty. The execution of Elizabeth would not just be a tragedy, it would be the final bloody act of the Dudley Grey dynasty securing its crown. The culture of this England is different. There is no Elizabethan golden age. The puritanical nature of the Dudley state is hostile to the raucous, secular world of the public theater. William Shakespeare is still born, but he writes in a different climate. Perhaps he writes not for the public stage, but private performances at court. His plays are not the broad, humanistic masterpieces of our world, but perhaps stern, moralistic tragedies based on biblical themes, or coded political allegories bemoaning the loss of the old Tudor world. The spirit of exploration is also different. Men like Sir Francis Drake are still brilliant seamen, but they are not swashbuckling privateers on a mission for personal profit and national glory. They are captains in the godly navy, fighting a holy war against the Spanish Antichrist in the New World. The expansion of England is not a commercial enterprise, it is a religious crusade. focused on establishing austere, puritanical colonies as a bulwark against the Catholic Spanish. The world born from Jane's victory is a world of stark choices. It avoided the bloody reign of Mary. It avoided the decades of succession anxiety that defined Elizabeth's rule. It created a stable, secure, and unapologetically Protestant nation, a beacon for reformers across Europe. But it is a world without Gloriana, a world without the Elizabethan compromise, without the defiant, swashbuckling spirit of a nation that defined itself against the odds. It is a more severe, more rigid, and, perhaps, a more brittle England. The 9-day tragedy of Queen Jane in our history was the necessary prelude to the magnificent, chaotic, and ultimately legendary story of her cousins. By winning, she would have saved her own life, but she would have robbed her nation of the very identity that would come to define it. Her victory would have been a quiet, scholarly, and profound kind of defeat. If you enjoyed this journey into a history that never was, please like this video and subscribe for more trips down the paths not taken.